finally, Unicorn Overlord is complete. Released back in 2024, it was always just out of the realm of one of the all-time great strategy games. It has a lot of mechanical issues, a lot of gameplay and balancing issues, a few features that were obviously implemented late in the development process to give it more mainstream appeal, but end up weakening the game as a whole. We now have mods to handle all of those issues. Anything you can think of, we have mods for them now, which is great because now we no longer need to worry about a PC release. That's no longer a necessity. In this video, I'm going to go through the mods available, talk about how you install them, talk about the various base game issues that they resolve, and how it changes the game in a significant way. First and foremost, mods are available for the Switch version of the game. If you're unfamiliar with modding for the Switch, it's pretty easy. Emulators are all over the place online. I use the Eden emulator. I run it on my Steam Deck. You can use whatever you want, honestly. There are a lot of emulators out there. All you really need is a Switch emulator that has modding functionality. Again, take your pick, you know. And then of course you need the ROM. You know, if you feel like that's a morally gray area, go buy the game. I own the game on the Switch. You know, I have the Switch ROM. You know, do what you're gonna do. But that's easy enough. Google it, figure out how to get that set up. It's pretty simple. And then in terms of actually downloading the mods, we have two different areas, two different portals. The first one is Melisand.re, which is a web page that has a number of mod options. You choose them, you customize them, and at the very end, you download a zip file. You export that to your mod folder for your Switch emulator of choice. Easy enough. The second mod is also like this. We have another web page, customize it, export it as a zip file, as an archive, extract it to your mod folder for your Switch emulator of choice. In terms of Unicorn Overlord specifically, I'm going to go through 5 of my favorite mods specifically because they handle the biggest issues that the base game presents. I like to call them the 5 fingers of failure, just for alliteration purposes. And we're going to go through them right now. The first one, pretty easy to understand, on the Melisand.re webpage is the ability editor. If you've played the game, and if you played any strategy games, you know that certain abilities are better than others, certain abilities are just overpowered. It's no different for this game. A lot of early game abilities are outrageous, a lot of late game abilities are game breaking. You have the ability to, for lack of a better word, make your own modifications. For example, I think High Swing is pretty ridiculous. I can edit that, make it slightly weaker. I think Wild Rush does too much. I can give that an actual weakness so it's not just a ridiculous move. And you can go down the entire ability tree. Specific abilities that you think are overpowered, specific abilities that you might think are underpowered. You can make the changes, various adjustments. Simple balance issue, very easy to understand. Second issue, I like to call it the sum on the finger of failure, is the battle preview. The biggest issue with this game is the fact that you don't have to fight to figure out whether you're going to win or lose, which seems odd, right? Imagine if you're in a war and you can figure out whether or not you're going to win a battle before you even start. Like literally, I'm going to lose this many men, I'm going to win in this amount of time, or I'm going to lose in this amount of time. You get to make different plans, you get to change adjustments before you even engage in battle. And then once you get a result that you like, then you hit go. Game's biggest problem, by far, clearly a feature that was added late in development because the fix for this was literally a toggle to turn it off. And the gameplay balance is not only upheld when you hide it, it actually improves immensely. So, my favorite feature, hide the battle preview. Straightforward to the point. If you still need it, you have another option, imperfect preview, which basically gives you an estimation of the outcome. So it still kind of tells you whether you'll win, whether you'll lose, whether it will be an overwhelming defeat, but it doesn't give you perfect information. It does like a simulation of 5 battles under the hood. It aggregates the result. It spits it out at you. You still have to react to whatever happens. You still have to plan for the worst case scenario. You still have to treat it like a strategy game and not a puzzle game. Most important mod, in my opinion, easily. You have other mods as well, which are nice, but I don't really mess with too many of them. You have randomizers, you can turn off the battle timer for missions, you can do shop editor, mine editor, fort editor for recruits, mercenary recruits. You can edit the classes if you want to do that too. You can change a lot of the growth points. You can change things like the skill points. You can change the ability levels. When you earn certain abilities, you can add abilities if you want to do that. All sorts of fun stuff. And you can do randomizers as well. 6-member units is a fun one too. By default, you can only go up to five units in a squad. This lets you go up to 6. Simple enough. And then a text editor is more like allowing you to change text strings. By default, we have some typo corrections. But other than that, it's really just modifications. Fun stuff, right? All of that's well and good. But my focus is on balance, functionality, where the game fails. Because as good as it is, the base game absolutely fails in some glaring areas. The second set of mods worth looking at, from a completely different creator. He just shared it on the Unicorn Overlord subreddit a couple of days ago. I think it was actually like 2 days ago from this date. I think his name is Sue1478, as shown here. It's nice that he was able to share that with the community because this is the other half of the equation. If the first set of mods resolve 50% of the issues in the base game, this set of mods resolve the other 50% of the issues. First one is his level scaling mod. Basically, it takes the average of your 10 strongest units on your team, and it brings the level of the units on the map up to that number. So any mission that you go into after that is going to be on the same level as your strongest, basically. Which is great because not only does it keep you from over-leveling and trivializing content when you have things like repeatable missions that give you unlimited experience, you have items that give you experience, you have all sorts of different ways to just out-level content. That's a great way to bring that in check. It also prevents you from accidentally out-leveling content because a lot of the base game missions are level locked. You know, you can do a lot of exploration. It's kind of an open world game. You can explore a part of the map, come back to an older part, and now you realize that it's like 4 or 5 levels beneath you. Missions, kind of a waste of time. This resolves it. I'm not entirely sure, but this might also bring the level of high level areas down. So this may actually allow you to do like varied exploration in terms of the various regions. This may actually allow you to vary the way that you tackle different regions. So instead of doing like Corneria Drakenhold, you may be able to do Corneria Astoria without having like a huge level gap between your team and the enemies. Not completely certain about that. I haven't gotten that far into the game to test it, but it sounds like that may be what it does as well. If anyone else uses it and you have a chance to comment, if you've actually had a chance to test this, you can tell me whether or not I'm right or wrong. I don't know. But that's number 3. Another issue. I wouldn't say it's a minor issue, but it's less damning than the other issues we're going to speak about. Obviously, the battle preview, I still think that's like that's in the top 2 of gameplay failures for this title. But the second one is this. And specifically this, we're going to go to class default. This is the mission squad editor, which allows you to not only change the format of different missions, whether it's like squads or tactics or items or formations for the squads, like so. It also gives you the ability to do something that the developers just weren't able to do, whether that's due to lack of time crunch, whether it's something they just felt like they didn't need to do. It is the second most glaring, and depending on who you ask, it might be the most glaring issue in the base game. And that is attack conditions, ability conditions. If you've played this game for any length of time, you'll notice that the vast majority of enemy units either don't have conditions for their abilities, or they have incomplete conditions for their abilities. And I'm talking about the single line abilities. You have like a warding flash, you have condition 1, you have condition 2. That's it. A lot of these abilities don't have conditions, and what that leads to is a game where it's very easy to exploit the AI. It doesn't matter how many units they throw at you. because the AI doesn't know how to use its own abilities properly. A great example is the Hunter, which is the ranged unit, the first ranged unit you get. Basic skill, ranged attack. This game works on a 2-row system, a front row and a back row. Melee attacks need to clear out the front row before they can hit the back row. Ranged attacks can hit anywhere on the screen. This game has Spellcaster that has squishy units, so to speak. You would think if you have an archer and there's a squishy unit in the back row, very basic stuff. You want the archer to shoot the squishy unit in the back row, right? Not how the base game works. What ends up happening is archers are tuned as a hard counter to flying units. But if there are no flying units, the archer will default to the normal AI targeting, which is basically shoot the first person in the first row. That's it. So on even this basic interaction, you can have an archer who will happily shoot at your front row tank while a cleric sits in the back, ripe to be sniped. And he just pings away at the guy with the big shield. And the game is littered with issues like this. There are so many abilities in this game, and the vast majority of them are not even basically tuned for even average combat functionality. We can go all across the board. But to cut a long story short, this portion of the mod lets you finally set up default tactics, default conditions for these abilities. You can do it based on how you feel. You can do it based on what you want. I have my own setup. For example, a fun one is the long thrust for the soldier. Column attacks can hit the back row. Squishy units tend to be in the back row. I want long thrust to focus on cavalry because it does more damage against cavalry, but I also want it to snipe back row squishy units, so it prioritizes the back row. And you can do fun stuff like that. And you can do some pretty devastating things as well, depending on how far you want to go with it. Another fun one is the upgrade to the witch, which I have here. She has quick cast. She has ice coffin. Ice coffin that targets the back row, which is where your support units are usually focused. Now you have a frozen back row, and you have to deal with that. The whole point I'm making is that we can finally set up conditions that at least make the AI fight and use the abilities to at least a reasonable degree. This alone makes a massive difference to the way the game feels. If you add nothing else, you need to do this. Even if it's very, very basic conditions, you don't have to get crazy like me. Just really basic stuff, just to make sure that, your archers are shooting with squishy units, your thieves aren't trying to passive steal against guys with a shield. They're focusing on the guys with the most PP. Whatever it is, you need to get in here and do this. Your clerics aren't wasting heals just because someone took 1 damage. I can talk about it all day, I won't. One of the biggest issues the game has resolved right here. Final issue, similar but not quite, is the way gear scaling works. By default, you have 3 tiers of gear scaling. It's level locked. If you've played the game, you've gotten into the mid game, you've gotten to the late game, you'll notice that the AI does not update its weapons at all. It will be using bronze swords when it has access to iron swords. It will be using iron swords when it has access to steel swords, black iron swords, dragon bone, Venorian weapons, whatever. And it will be using steel swords for the remainder of the game. Makes no sense. This game has a plethora of generic items that give no abilities, no bonuses. They do nothing but scale up defense and scale up attack, just to keep the enemies on par as the levels grow. By default, AI does not use them at all. I'd love to see elves in the elf region using spell steal as something to boost their innate abilities. I'd love to see, beast using silver weapons because they have access to them. Easy stuff, right? This allows you to scale up the weapons depending on the area. What I don't like about it, and it's not a knock on the mod, because I get it, I spoke to the author and he said this is the restriction, the base game restriction. This is something he pushed out initially, version 1. Might be the last version, might be the first version of many, who knows. Credit to him for sharing it all, because that's a lot of work, and it's a lot of stress to put your stuff out in the public. I get it. But you have the ability to scale up weapons. So for example, if I'm in Drakenhold and the shops have black iron armor and weapons, maybe I can change this to black iron armor and weapons. Black iron, right? Black iron axe. That's an option. I can do the same for all the other different classes. And something worth noting is that when you make the change here, it applies to every enemy. The same is true for class defaults. By default, their default abilities all have the conditions. The default enemies all have the gear, right? As you'd expect. Pretty simple. And I would say that's number 5. Those are 5 issues that truly hold the base game back from being an all-time great game. A strategy title. It's good, but they're just so egregious, especially the battle preview and the lack of good default condition, that it just makes it really disappointing once you really get into it. It makes it less of a strategy game and more of like a sandbox where you get to test out your different power fantasies and kind of run through the game unchallenged, unless you really limit yourself, and even then it's hard. One bonus, though, which I really like, this is going to take a little bit of work. I think the author is actually planning to release a mod pack that involves going through all the missions and customizing them. Is the ability to do, like I spoke earlier, mission-based units. I touched on it before. So, for example, if I look at this one, the Priestess Abducted, I can modify all of the squads for this mission. I can change the equipment that they have. If I'm not going to use the default gear, I can do it on a squad by squad basis if I want to do that. If I'm not going to use the class default for the skill conditions, I can do my own. This also allows you to set up the priority chains. So, by default, your control characters can have up to like 8 different conditions. You can do the same here. So, for example, if I wanted to update Renault, I could give him like better priorities for the fight, so he's not just doing basic stuff and he acts more like a boss. I can go to this guy, Hilarious, and I can make him a real nightmare by optimizing his tactics. And the nice thing about it is, when you do all of this, it's not really like other mods where we're updating, like we're giving them better items or we're buffing their stats and stuff. We're making them more competent, and by doing that, you're naturally making the game more challenging, you're making them smarter, you're making it more engaging if you're someone who's looking for a more engaging title. I know not everybody's into that. A lot of people like the power fantasy, run through it, have a fun romp done. I feel like that's a disservice to the game. I understand why the devs had to add certain features to ensure that they maximize profitability at the end of the day. I get it. But yeah, ultimately, thanks to these mods, we really don't need anything else. If it comes to PC, great, but at this point, I honestly don't care. I think we're good as we are. Try it out. If you're a fan of the game, looking for something different, if you're looking for more of the ultimate version of this game, if you have your own ideas in terms of balance and things like that, give it a try.